All right, well, welcome everyone to a conversation on residential building benchmarking. This session that we're going to be doing is a little bit different than our typical Wednesday webinar series. This one is meant to be a little bit more engaging, and throughout the session, we're going to have polls and opportunities to engage in the conversation and in the chat and asking for your feedback on the ideas that we're proposing here. The goal is to kind of bring a foundational level awareness of residential building benchmarking for especially targeting the multifamily and single family sector, like with home disclosure policies. And the intention is to engage directly with those who are active in their communities, whether they're um, uh, elected officials, work for city staff, work for housing agencies, or otherwise engaged in their community and policy and advocacy. Specifically within Michigan is what our goal is, but a lot of this can be relevant anywhere, and so we welcome anyone to engage in this conversation. We don't want to exclude anyone from anywhere where there might be an opportunity to benefit. So that will be what we're going through today, and so we welcome you in joining us. We did want to get a shout out to the Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition for essentially empowering us to do this effort, encouraging us to do this effort, and who's playing an active role in collecting some of the information we're getting here today on building benchmarking opportunities and challenges within the state of Michigan. And in a second, we will hear from them. But before we get started, as a reminder, this session is brought to you officially by the Green Home Institute. The Green Home Institute is a nonprofit with a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. Today, I will be a moderator and a speaker. My name is Brett Little. I am the education manager here. We are a small but mighty team of two, with also our executive director, Jose Reyna, as well. Um, like all of our sessions, this one is approved for multiple continuing education units, including the energy pillar and our certified green home professional designation. AIA Health, Welfare, and Safety may make it applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. So before we get started, we want to hear from you. Who are you, and what is your background, and what do you know currently about building benchmarking? So I am launching a poll. You should be able to see it right now. The first question is, what is your background? Are you municipal or city leader, elected official, housing agency staff, other building professional, or other? The second question is, where are you located? We want to get a sense for who's here today. Michigan, the Midwest at large, excluding Michigan, uh, United States, if you're not in the Midwest, but in the United States, or are you calling in from another country? And then finally, how familiar are you with building energy benchmarking? And feel free to, in the chat, put more details about your familiarity, such as whether you're involved in it or whether your city has a benchmarking policy or anything like that. So you can take that poll, and while you're taking these polls, I'll ask for more feedback from you within the chat. So let's give everyone a second to complete these questions, and then we will proceed. All right, so again, we're having a conversation here about residential building benchmarking, kind of giving you the basics of it, but then hearing from you on opportunities and challenges for this, especially in the state of Michigan, but beyond as well. And so on that note, I wanted to hand it over to Jacob to introduce himself and the Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition. So Jacob, go ahead.
Oh, great. Thanks, Brett. Yeah, as Brett said, my name is Jacob Surflang. I'm the Director of Policy and Projects for Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition, or Midwest BDC is less of a mouthful. We've been around about a little over 5 years now with the mission to develop and implement equitable strategies to achieve zero emissions from the Midwest building sector by 2050. So essentially, we want to get those hazardous fossil fuels out of buildings in the region, and we want to do it in a way that doesn't leave anybody behind. Um, I know that everybody kind of has their pet definition of what counts as the Midwest. So just to clarify, we have 8 focus states that we primarily work in, including Michigan. I'll also say we have a pretty wide-ranging membership. If you're interested in becoming part of the coalition, everybody from those big green groups like an RMI or an NRDC, down to we have church green teams or local community development corporations that engage with us. We have a number of different collaborative working groups, including our affordable housing working group, where we work together on different policy issues, a pretty robust training and advocacy events calendar with our members. So certainly would welcome anybody to come check us out and get engaged. Okay, now I can let you go to that next slide, Brett. As Brett kind of mentioned at the top, we're currently working on a collaboration with GHI to do some affordable housing plus energy burden and decarb advocacy in Michigan. That's touching on a few different things, including stuff that we'll be talking about today. So just wanted to take like a brief minute to talk about why Midwest BDC engages with this space as an issue. And really, it comes back to that commitment to not just making that transition off of fossil fuels as our primary heating and water heating source in the Midwest, but doing that as an equitable way. So when we talk about affordable housing, we first off, we're recognizing that there simply isn't enough affordable units on offer in the Midwest to meet the need. And we also recognize that rent isn't the only thing that contributes to those units being affordable. 90% of renters pay for their own electricity. Most of them, if it's not an all electric unit, are also paying for that other heating fuel, whether that be natural gas or propane or whatever else that might be. Uh, but for the most part, they are also not making the decisions that drive how much of that energy that they need to use, which is really putting those folks in a bad position, right? They're responsible for the energy bills, but tend to not have the same ability or resources to make improvements that might make those bills lower or more manageable, never mind any other health or safety consequences that might come with the types of fuel that are being used in their home. So if we go to the next slide. So this is from a tool that is no longer available from the U.S. Department of Energy, unfortunately, but we pulled these numbers prior to the start of this year. Just to kind of give, again, another lay of the land before we get into more specific policy information about why these things are so important to address. So most folks on the call are probably familiar with the term energy burden, which is just simply the percentage of household energy bills that or of household income that goes to those annual energy bills. And according to the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, they generally consider 6% of household income going to energy bills as high energy burden. 10% or greater is deemed especially severe. And what we see when we look at renting households in the Midwest, even before we get into, the lowest income renters that would be applying for affordable housing units and things like that. We see that most of the states that we're working in are either averaging around that high energy burden range or getting pretty close to it. And unfortunately, Michigan is the high range of it, with on average rental households butting right up against that severe energy burden range for those lower income levels. So this is really a key issue to um, be looking at what we can do at the policy level to encourage those improvements to happen to those properties on behalf of the tenants. And if we go to the next slide, um, just in general, if you want to learn more about Midwest BDC, our website is midwestdecarb.org, and we're on most social media, not X anymore, at Midwest BDC. So certainly follow us there. We have a newsletter that we try not to be too spammy with, and on our website, we're certainly happy to talk about becoming a member if that's something that's of interest to you. Thanks, Brett.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. And we're going to quickly have our other speakers introduce themselves, and then they're going to come back in later with some of their topics. So, Kayla, go ahead.
Thanks, Brett. Hi, everyone. My name is Kayla Snyder. I am the Senior Programs Manager with the Michigan Green Building Collaborative. Our mission is to transform the way buildings and communities are designed, built, and operated that improves the quality of life in Michigan. So we work with a lot of building owners, architects, engineers, consultants, really anybody working in the building construction, design, and operations. Um, you might know us as the U.S. Green Building Council of West Michigan. We changed our name earlier this year to better reflect the statewide reach that we do have. And that is really through the programs that we run, which I will be talking about a little bit later. So thanks for being here today, everyone.
Thanks, Kayla. And then I'll hand it over to Caitlin.
My name is Caitlin Rude and I work with Bright Power. Bright Power does a number of things in the affordable and market rate multifamily space, one of which is energy scorecards, which we'll talk about today, a benchmarking tool. And then we have other services primarily focused in the New York area, but some things that are national. And we'll be talking about our benchmarking offering that is relevant to this conversation today. And I'm a career sustainability professional, and I've been in the affordable and multifamily space for about oh gosh, a little over maybe I'm a dozen years now, and sustainability for my whole career, and previously was the sustainability director for Mercy Housing, the largest affordable housing nonprofit in the country, as I'm sure you are all aware. They're the big guys, one of the big guys anyway. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Caitlin. And then Connor.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. I'm Connor Daly, he/him energy coordinator with the City of Ann Arbor's Office of Sustainability and Innovations. Our office implements 820, which is our plan for achieving a just transition to community-wide carbon neutrality in Ann Arbor by 2030. A lot that goes into that, not just building decarbonization, community resilience is part of it, sustainable food systems, strengthening our circular economy, but I focus on building decarbonization, specifically implementing our energy and water benchmarking ordinance, and then a couple of other programs less relevant for today, but happy to be here and talk about benchmarking.
All right. Thank you so much, Connor. We'll bring them all back out again in a little bit. But just at kind of a high level, what is building benchmarking? And so I'm going to kind of paraphrase what currently is still in existence and listed on the EPA's Energy Star website. And that is benchmarking is a method for measuring a building's energy efficiency by comparing its energy use to buildings with similar functions. For example, commercial offices, K through 12 schools, or in our case that we're talking about specifically today, multifamily and residential single-family housing. Baseline data is typically compiled from a building energy consumption survey, a national survey on a building energy usage. For certain unique building uses, a modeled building of the same size may be used as the baseline. The most commonly used metric for benchmarking buildings is called the energy use intensity, or EUI, which is a measure of energy use such as kBTUs or MBTUs per square foot for that. So, how familiar are you with the Energy Star portfolio manager, which is our main kind of tool to do this type of benchmarking. I want to launch a poll here. Looks like I didn't stop the other poll yet, so sorry about that. But I want to launch a poll here with your familiarity and just get a quick sense. Again, the question is, how familiar are you with Energy Star Portfolio Manager? And again, always feel free to elaborate a little bit more after you answer it in the chat. Drop in some further comments about how you use it, how you work with it, how you've seen anyone working with it before. Feel free to elaborate a little bit more. We want to hear, all thoughts and ideas back. So we'll give everyone a second to take that real quick, and then and then to drop a comment in the chat, and then we'll keep on going. Now, there was one trick question in here. I don't know if any of you picked up on it about what ends up happening with our Energy Star program, being that it typically is considered an appliance and equipment and light bulb certification program. And people don't realize it has these other functions of certifying homes and buildings and monitoring energy usage through Portfolio Manager. So this was a trick question. And 14% of you thought that's what it was for, which is what I thought might be the case. So hopefully you'll learn something that Energy Star goes far beyond certifying our appliances, and hopefully you can take that to show that there is great value to maintaining this program. But so on that note, the reality is there are a variety of tools and resources to help do building benchmarking. Of course, the most well-known one is the Environmental Protection Agency's, or EPA's, Energy Star Portfolio Manager, but we'll get into some of the other tools that are deployed in other ways and some alternatives to the Portfolio Manager, which may be necessary as looming concerns about the existence of Portfolio Manager hang over us. But this tool, this Energy Star portfolio, takes the building energy consumption data we discussed in the benchmarking section earlier. It includes building features like square feet, units for multifamily, climate location, and then it generates an energy use intensity EUI, which can be then converted to a rating or a scale, such as the Energy Star Portfolio Manager's 1 through 100 scale. Now, on that scale, 50 represents a median energy performance for that particular building use and typology and climate, and then 100 being the best. It's important to know 100 does not mean net zero, which sometimes gets confused. In some of the other tools, usually zero does mean net zero, but 100 doesn't mean a net zero building. So it's still not perfect even at 100. Buildings that score 75 or higher can be certified to the Energy Star standard. This program is free to use, but setting it up, and I'm telling you this from personal experience, can be very, very complicated and complex and may require paid consultants for assistance to do it. The National Association of State Officials has a whole page dedicated to other benchmarking resources, so you can check them out over at nasio.org for building benchmarking opportunities. So in addition to the Energy Star Portfolio Manager, there are these other tools to help benchmarking buildings. We're going to discuss a couple of them here today, but part of it depends on what the job you're trying to accomplish is. On the bottom left, for small multifamily and single family and soon to be small multifamily any day now, the U.S. Department of Energy, US DOE Home Energy Score includes an EUI, but also converts the score from a 1 through 10 rating. And it's typically, and 10, of course, being the best, but again, not net zero. And it is an asset rating of the building, meaning it's not based on utility bills, but it's based on what actually is going on in the building, the structure, the mechanical systems. And we'll get into how that's being used for disclosure later. On the bottom right sides here, we have got the energy rating index, typically known as the HERS index, which is typically used for new construction, single-family homes, major gut rehabs, and low-rise multifamily. And then we've got the ASHRAE 90.1, which is a percent better than code, which is typically used for code compliance for multifamily, larger multifamily buildings and commercial buildings, new constructions, and renovation. So when it comes to achieving carbon reduction goals set by your company, your housing development, your city, your county, your state, typically you can sort of follow the classic SMART goal model. You need to use specific benchmarking program with measurable results that can be achieved, that has relevancy to your community and has some kind of time-bound constraint to it. For example, you might say, we'll ensure all multifamily buildings in our city with 20 or more units or a certain square footage will report their Energy Star score yearly, which will help building owners understand their energy usage. This is just one example of a SMART goal being applied to the building benchmarking process. So what are some of the benefits of energy benchmarking that you believe are of value? And so I want us to take this quick poll, and then we're actually going to dive into some of these items to see if that kind of changes your thoughts or your ideas. So let's go into that real quick and launch it. So just looking at our results here, it looks like we've got a pretty good mix. It looks like overall the highest value is going to be utility bill cost reduction. Now, whether that's the value you believe it should bring or the value that you think it brings, I guess those are two different questions. But of course, that's what it's all about, right? We need to find ways to cut utility costs as they go up frequently. And then I can see sort of the lowest response being achieving a green building certification. So we'll, get into more of these items as well. All right. So again, what are the benefits? So let's talk about what the benefits are. So one of the benefits of building energy benchmarking is transparency. So what it does is it helps people understand their energy usage, their costs, their carbon emissions, helps people, companies, owners, tenants, renters, cities, municipalities. When I say people, I'm kind of including these different entities who might need to know this information. I think it's, especially as we're talking about multifamily and rentals, this is especially important for renters and home buyers who need to understand the cost of their building operations to make decisions on purchasing that home or building. If they, are underinformed about this information, buy a home and then get into something they can't afford, that can be deeply troubling. And so that's where I think a lot of the value of transparency goes to building benchmarking and energy disclosure policies. But yeah, and so that's what it leads to these results is you can't manage what you don't measure. So by having an idea of what your energy costs and usage of your building operators may be, you can be more proactive to reduce those costs. Now, this is a little bit old, and I think we'll get some more data from some of our other speakers, but straight off the a 2012 report off the EPA, it states that buildings start with a lower Energy Star score and higher energy use achieve the greatest value in energy and cost savings. Buildings start with below average energy efficiency in 2008, examples score under 50, save twice as much energy as those buildings starting above the average. And we'll talk a little bit about these sort of biggest loser type approaches to saving energy. And so obviously the big energy users are the ones where we can get a lot more benefit. So in theory, if we're saving energy, carbon emissions should also be plummeting. So, so carbon reduction should follow that. And when municipalities or companies set your own, or building managers set your carbon reduction goals, having these benchmarking in place are what help you figure out how to achieve these goals, especially if you're a part of a larger program, which we'll talk about here soon. Also, indirectly, perhaps benchmarking is creating jobs directly through consultants who are providing benchmarking services, energy modeling, energy audits. but more importantly, indirectly creating jobs in the building energy efficiency improvement sector, energy mechanical improvements, HVAC improvements, plumbing, electrical, even solar power, renewable energy specialist jobs may be created as a result of the awareness of energy usage and increase and sort of transparency to decrease that usage. Now, one thing I found fascinating when I was researching the benefits of building energy benchmarking was sort of a surprising benefit of discovering of improving building and home maintenance. And so part of it is if you're looking at your energy and maybe your water usage through benchmarking policies, and you're getting maybe an energy audit done as a result of it, you're now discovering other concerns that are happening that are tied directly to building durability, HVAC system health, occupant resident health, and other maintenance issues. And so there have been statements and things like, hey, we didn't know the building had a leak until we started monitoring the water usage, or we didn't know our HVAC system wasn't functioning well till we started benchmarking and monitoring the energy usage. So it might lead to encouragement of maintenance and upkeep for our building stock. Another benefit might be an increased resale value if repairs are done and communicated effectively and can show the improvement. It might add to that resale value of the property. And then finally, if a project is desiring to achieve a green building certification for whatever reason, it might be a tax credit, an incentive, just the right thing to do. It's part of your sustainability plan, your marketing plan. Um, the benchmarking helps with this. So for LEED for homes, you can get 1 to 2 extra points by doing proper benchmarking. And for enterprise green community certification for low income, it actually mandates you do this. You have no choice. You have to do it. Now, you can do it begrudgingly and the worst amount of information, or you can lean into it and do it beneficially and find value out of it. And we would hope you would take the latter, but either way, you have to do it for enterprise. So let's jump into another poll. Now that we've went through some of these high-level ideas, I'm going to go ahead and kick this one on here real quick. And this one has to do with going through and rating each of the benefits on a 1 through 5 scale. So this one's going to be a little bit of a larger poll, so bear with me. But they're all the same idea. We went through each of the potential benefits, and on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the highest, how much do you think transparency is a benefit? 1 being not at all, 5 being a huge benefit, or maybe you just don't have enough information to know the answer, and that's okay. This is just a low-level conversation here, high-level conversation, to get the thoughts going. Same goes for, again, the same question for utility cost savings. Do you feel it's a benefit or not? Same question goes for carbon emission reduction, benefit or not, maintenance, certification, and so on. Or maybe you just don't have enough information yet and you need to continue to learn more, and that's okay, before you could, make that decision. So go ahead and take that poll real quick. We'll take a look at the results, and then we'll continue on. So again, just taking a look at some of our results here at a high level, benefits of building transparency as a result of benchmarking, kind of on the higher end, that's good there. As a result of, or benefits in regards to cost savings, again, definitely high on that one. Benefits to carbon emissions reductions, a little bit mixed between neutral and high. Benefits on job creation, that one's a little bit scattered all over the place, not quite sure about that answer. Don't know enough information. Benefits to building maintenance, kind of ebbing on the not sure to a little bit higher. And finally, benefits to achieving green building certification, again, a little bit mixed. Not sure, perhaps it is a benefit as well. So thank you for taking that real quick. Okay, so what is the process? How do you go about building energy benchmarking? The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, has, at least for now, an exchange page that goes over at a high level how to do building benchmarking. Step one is to prepare your approach and create a plan. First, you need to catalog the portfolio of homes and buildings in your community or in your portfolio. And for the buildings, include what types of meters are serving the buildings and homes. You need to research your utility providers in addition to cataloging their portfolio of your organization, and learn how your utility providers offer their services and whether they're able to aggregate your utility meter, and whether it connects directly to the Energy Star portfolio manager if you're using that. You also need to establish who will lead this. Is this an in-house thing with someone on your staff? Is it someone you need to hire for this position? Or do you need a third-party agency or consultant to help with that? And so HUD, again, lays out all this information, kind of gives you some step-by-step detail on how to achieve these results. Now, looking at step number 2, we need to determine how you will collect that data. And that's ultimately done through 4 different pathways that they explain, but there could be more. So method A is properties with only owner-paid utility bills, and looking at, again, that kind of high-level information. Method B is aggregated whole property utility data. So that's regardless of the split of owner-paid and tenant-paid utility bills. There's the property owner requests aggregated whole property utility data from the utility providers. There's also method C, obviously most ideal if you've got, and especially in multifamily or large volumes of single family homes, being able to collect 100% of all the tenant paid utility data for the most information. And then method D, collection of a sample of tenant paid utility data, though HUD will note this typically is not accepted by local laws or for Energy Star certification to do that. So again, let's take a quick poll here, and the question will be, what method do you typically use, or do you think, if you were to use it, would be the most relevant to either your city, your community, your building portfolio, or what you're planning to work on? So again, the question is it method A, properties with only one owner paid bill or at a high level of the whole property? Method B, aggregated whole property utility data. C, tenant paid every unit. D, a sample of every unit. Preferably, I'd like you to pick the one you think is most favorable, but we also have an opportunity for you to mention, hey, it could be many of these depending on what the situation is. You might have a different idea of what you think the way it could work or how it does work. So you feel free to click that and then share it in the chat. Or maybe you believe we shouldn't be collecting any information and it's not relevant at all, and that's fine too. So feel free to, put that information in there too. All right. So one thing that's nice here in Michigan and perhaps in other states is our investor-owned utilities have their landlord portals, which gives landlords the right to automatically access a lot of data about their tenants in regards to gas and electric usage data. This data can be shared with consultants, green building programs if needed, but it makes it easy to access information and determine what might be needed for the property. One question I might throw out there, and you can just answer this in the chat, whether you live in Michigan or not, if you'd be willing to say, hey, do you use your landlord portal? Is it something you access or help with as a consultant? Do you, log into it and see it? Feel free to share your experience there again in the chat with the group, as whether you're in Michigan or outside of Michigan, if you have an access to something like a landlord portal where you can get aggregate data typically on a unit by unit basis for multifamily. So the next step is for you to enter your data and then share your data. The best place to do this for now is the Energy Star Portfolio Manager, but in the event that program shuts down, there are many other ways to do this that we'll also share with you. We have two guests here who will discuss some of these approaches and some unique ways that Michigan is doing that. So Kayla, I'm going to hand it off to you with Michigan Green Building Collaborative to take us through what you all are working on.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. So this is just to show you some of the programs that we are involved in varying capacity levels. And so if you see any of these logos, again, we're involved in some way or another. Brett, can you go to the next slide, please? Today, I'm going to be talking about the Michigan Battle of the Buildings and the 2030 district model. We oversee the Grand Rapids and Lansing 2030 districts. Lansing is newer. It launched this year. And I oversee the Grand Rapids 2030 district while my colleague, Audrey, oversees Lansing. So I'll mostly be talking through the Grand Rapids lens. Both of these, though, are our approaches to one's a competition for benchmarking, and the other one is more of encouraging voluntary benchmarking from building owners. Next slide. So I'm going to start with the Michigan Battle of the Buildings. We have been running this competition for 11 years now, and it is a biggest loser styled energy efficiency competition. So Brett used the term biggest loser earlier. What does that mean? Exactly what it sounds like. We award those who reduce the greatest amount of energy annually at the Michigan Energy Summit, which for the last 11 years has been held in Grand Rapids, and in 2026 will be in Lansing. So the Battle of the Buildings competition, we go back one. Thank you. We have about 270 million square feet participating. This is throughout the state. So because the conference has been held in Grand Rapids for so long, a lot of people can, get confused that it's just a West Michigan thing, or maybe because we were the USGBC of West Michigan. I just like to reiterate that this is a statewide competition. And our winners on average reduce about 15% in their weather normalized EUI. So Brett mentioned energy use intensity. We use that metric in this competition, and it is year over year. Next slide. So how does the competition work? It's based on energy data. We're talking about energy benchmarking, of course. That is how you participate in this competition. So it is a way for us to encourage buildings throughout the state to benchmark and track their energy usage. So again, we award buildings annually, and we look at the last 2 years of data. So when we award buildings in 2026, it will be for the 2025 competition year, which is looking at data from 2024 compared to 2025. And again, it's based on weather normalized EUI. Next slide, please. So these are the categories of buildings that can participate. It's really any building type except for single family residential. And so I know this is focused on residential and multifamily, which is why I wanted to highlight that multifamily is a category. And we do have some fantastic case studies of past winners and what they've done in their buildings to reduce energy usage. Next slide, please. So that was the Michigan Battle of the Buildings. I'll send out a link to where you can learn more. You can look at the website and sign up your building if you'd like. One more thing I'll say about Battle is that if you enroll, it is free to enroll, and you will be in the competition as long as you want to be. We do not penalize you if you do not finish your benchmarking, if you gain energy usage. We're really just looking at those who reduce energy in that year. So moving on to the 2030 districts, there are 4 in the state of Michigan, Ann Arbor, Washtenaw, Detroit, Lansing, and Grand Rapids. Like I mentioned, we oversee Grand Rapids and Lansing. We work very closely with Detroit and Ann Arbor, but they are their own individual nonprofits. The 2030 model, there are about 24 of them across the United States and Canada, and each 2030 district works very closely with the municipality, the city that they are in, but they are a nonprofit. So it's a public-private partnership, and we work to decarbonize the built environment, so buildings, transportation, and water. Next slide, please. And so I'm going to talk from the Grand Rapids lens for the majority, or for the rest of this. We have 20.6 million square feet participating, 81 building owners, 20 community stakeholders, and 20 professional partners. Those professional partners are those who provide services, so energy auditing, consulting, architects, engineers, utility partners, etc. The building owners are free to join, and that's where the voluntary benchmarking comes in. We ask all of their building owner members to share their data with us in Energy Star Portfolio Manager. I didn't mention this in battle, but Energy Star Portfolio Manager is what we use for that competition as well. Next slide, please. So one of the resources that we recently put out in partnership with our professional stakeholders is the Achieving Energy and Carbon Goals Guidebook. We have talked about how benchmarking can help achieve carbon reduction goals. And so this guidebook goes through the different established 2030 goals there are from the state level, the local level, and the 2030 district level. It goes over energy management, how to understand your energy data, setting goals, getting an assessment, and what steps to take after that, and as well as tons of resources. Next slide, please. And then this is kind of where the sticking point comes in. We've been working very heavily with building owners on energy benchmarking for over 10 years now. And we know that it is definitely a priority of us. We've strongly encouraged all building owners to do it, but we know it's not always a priority for building owners, managers, operators, facilities people. And so we have tried a lot of different avenues to keep this data up to date. But we have landed on a new fee-for-service model so that it just takes it off the plate of that building owner manager. It's a low-cost fee where we will do the benchmarking for them. So we will facilitate that energy data upload into Energy Star Portfolio Manager. It's more automated for the client, but it's still quite a manual process on our end, and that's why there's a fee tied to it, and it's not free. It's there to cover the labor that we will be uploading all of that information into Energy Star. And with this comes an annual statement of energy usage from BEAM, which is Building Energy Analysis Manager. And a lot of municipalities have adopted this tool for benchmarking compliance. But one of the benefits of it is that it gives you a scorecard. So that is live right now. Next slide. The last thing I want to mention is that with our name change, we have a new website where we're trying to make it more resource and case study focused. So we have a resource hub. We have a case study hub too, kind of at the top there. You can see the two options in the menu bar. We have pages dedicated to small commercial, large commercial, and cities and municipalities on how they can address energy benchmarking and energy management. So I'll send some links in the chat so you can kind of go through these. The last thing I wanted to mention, because we were talking about benefits of benchmarking, especially with like municipalities, or if you have many buildings, you can then prioritize where you want to do the work, the maintenance or upgrades, which is really nice to see when you have a bunch of buildings that you're working with. So thank you.
Thanks, Kayla. Yeah, please reach out to her if you have any questions or you're in Michigan and you want to look into the battle. So, going back to step number 3 again in our HUD list, besides Energy Star Portfolio Manager, there are now many other market-based programs that may be beneficial, especially if the Energy Star Portfolio Manager is taken offline due to a shutdown of EPA, of Energy Star, and/or staff being removed from the EPA, whatever the reason may be at any point in the next couple of years. So we will briefly look at energy scorecards. Another one I wanted to throw out there was WegoWise and Measurable. You can check them out. They have a free kind of ability to log in and check out an account, a trial run. But a lot of these tools, automate bringing on data for you as well. And they're not tied to portfolio managers, so they will still exist in the event of an Energy Star shutdown. So Caitlin, I appreciate you joining us to talk us through energy scorecards.
Great. Thanks so much. Lots of talk about Energy Star Portfolio Manager today, and it's a tool out there that is being used for benchmarking across the country at the moment. There are some differences between energy scorecards and WeGoWise and Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Everybody knows that Energy Star Portfolio Manager is free, but what comes with free is that there's a lot of work involved. You have to set up your own properties into the system. You have to maintain the data, which is really no small task at all. The data set in Energy Star Portfolio Manager is gets its data, it gets compared against a static data set that doesn't change very often. I think it's maybe changed once. And they have national factors for doing their evaluation. There's lots of limitations in the regression modeling and how it's used and how much it requires of the user. So energy scorecards and WeGoWise offer these other alternatives that are specifically developed for the multifamily industry. And with energy scorecards, you get a dedicated data analyst that helps go through all of these processes for you. And as you all have pointed out in your comments and your responses to the polls, the big things that you can get out of this are the ability to know where you can reduce your costs and where you can where you have maintenance opportunities at your property, specifically from what you see in the energy scorecards data set. So this is an overview of what an entire portfolio would look like, where it gives you a grade. This grade is based on this is all for multifamily. Energy scorecards is developed specifically for multifamily. So similar properties that are in similar climate zones, that are similar kinds of properties. Is it garden style? Is it high rise? Who pays what bills, the tenants or the owners, for the electricity and the hot water heating and the space heating? And then takes all of those factors into consideration and then compares similar buildings and similar climate zones and then grades them on quartiles A, B, C, and D. So this is what a whole portfolio looks like. And on the next slide, we can see what it looks like if you look at an individual property. So we can see for an individual property how it is performing and where its issues are broken down into end use areas. Are there issues with how the building is heating? It's how the building is being heated. In this instance, yes, the building is getting a D grade for heating, but doing A for electric baseload and getting a C for hot water heating and a C for water. So you can see that you might focus at this property on like, okay, we're spending the most amount of money on heating this building and on our water use. This is, you can look at owner or whole building. In this instance, the owner is paying these bills. So how can we reduce the owner paid expenses by focusing in on these specific areas? So lots of information available on a dashboard for a property to help dive in and show where your opportunities are. Next slide. Energy scorecards gives you the ability to dive into the account level and see for each account that you have with your utility, electric, gas, water, what your history is of use at that particular property for that account. And then you can access the actual utility bills by clicking on those paper clips. On the next slide, you can see that all of that data then can be rolled up because you'll have multiple utility bills usually at a property. So you can roll all of those up and bin them into months and see your entire history of use unweather normalized at the property. You can turn years on and off and, see something happened there in September of 2020. That data can be used in all kinds of ways and is downloadable, the actual data out of the tool. And on the next slide, we can look at a measurement and verification report that that is weather normalized. So you implemented a project that was intended to reduce energy at the property. How is it performing on a weather normalized baseline versus post implementation data over time? And though you can see, oh wait, we're starting to move into a place where we're not saving money or we're not saving energy. What happened? And then course correct as we go along. All of this data it gets pushed into Energy Star Portfolio Manager as a part of using Energy Scorecards. So you do get both Energy Star Portfolio Manager and Energy Scorecards when you use Energy Scorecards, but you don't have to do that work. The energy analyst does that for you. And then that also they take care of making sure that you meet reporting requirements. So somebody mentioned Massachusetts. There are many, and Brett's going to talk about this, I think maybe on the next slide, many places across the country that have benchmarking laws. So Energy Scorecards will push your data into Energy Star Portfolio Manager and ensure that your benchmarking requirements are met for anywhere in the country where you might have a property that is subject to those laws. Yet you can still use it if you're not subject to the laws for all of the many benefits that we've been talking about for benchmarking during the course of this session today. Happy to take any questions in the chat. And yeah, I think that's all I have today.
Great. Thank you so much, Caitlin. It's good to know that there are other resources and programs out there that are available in the event that we, lose or Energy Star Portfolio Manager is diminished. So yeah, as you were alluding to, one of the Institute for Market Transformations, or IMT's, most in-demand resources, according to them, is this map here that summarizes which cities, counties, states have adopted mandatory building energy benchmarking transparency policies for existing buildings. And so you can see this is updated as of July. It looks like they keep it really well updated. IMT also maintains comparison metrics of U.S. commercial building energy benchmarking transparency policies, U.S. building performance standards, and tune-ups and retro recommissioning policies, again, if you're looking for ideas to implement in your community. As again, we're talking about Michigan, so a huge shout out to our good friends at City of Detroit for their implementation in 2023 of their building benchmarking ordinance going into effect here as well, looking at multifamily commercial buildings of 25,000 square feet and greater using Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Also, as of last week, a huge shout out to the City of Grand Rapids, who passed their Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, which listed many things in that plan, but out of their 20 priority targets, looked at working with expanding the idea of actual data in building development, design, construction, and operational decisions. So you can check that out on their website. But we've also got Connor here, who's going to kind of help wrap us up here today, talking about what City of Ann Arbor is doing with their ordinance policy. So Connor, take it away.
Thanks, Brett. I know we're a little over time, so I'll be concise here. Thanks, everyone. Connor Daly. I work on our energy and water benchmarking ordinance, which covers commercial and multifamily properties in Ann Arbor. I can go next slide. So to start, as I mentioned earlier, our office implements Ann Arbor's A20 Climate Action Plan, looking to achieve equitable transition to carbon neutrality by 2030. And why benchmarking is a big part of that is that we have a whole strategy in the A20 plan around increasing building efficiency. Reason for that is that Ann Arbor has about 2/3 of our emissions from buildings. So when we're looking to decarbonize, buildings is where it's at. Not only that, but it is kind of a consumer protection thing of when a renter is looking for a place to live. We've talked about this already in the webinar. We want them to have an idea of, if all else is equal with rent here, and this property is 20% more efficient than the other property, can get an idea of what that might have an impact on your energy bills. Next slide. So for our ordinance, it actually covers two segments of properties. It does cover some city properties. It's those over 10,000 square feet that we either own, lease, or manage, and that we pay the bills for. But the bulk of the properties complying are privately owned buildings that are over 20,000 square feet. That could be one building over 20,000 or a campus, or think of a multifamily property that has 8 buildings that in aggregate are 50,000 square feet, let's say. Our ordinance was passed in October 2021, and it was phased in over several years, with the last phased in deadline being last June. That was when the smallest properties were required to submit their first report. We were initially planning to start enforcement of the ordinance last year, but in the last 12 months, we've had significant improvements to compliance and our own outreach and engagement with folks. So we postponed that to this year. And then as of August of this year, we are moving into our compliance period and starting enforcement for out of compliance properties. Next slide. So here's a quick chart of it. In the last 15 months, we've increased compliance from about 4% to 71%. And then participation, meaning folks who are in the process of benchmarking if they're not fully compliant, from about 30% to 90%. Big helps for us for that have been our local 2030 district. Can't shout them out enough. They've been instrumental to that. We have a contract with our district to provide funds for not only benchmarking services, but some next steps. Free energy audits, small energy management grants, so that folks get this data and they have something to start them on the path to making improvements. The benchmarking ordinance does not require them to make those improvements, but it's an option for them to get started. We've kind of touched on data automation as a tool for benchmarking, and we're fortunate that our utility, DTE, does have a data automation program that when a building is enrolled is very helpful for automating and reducing the workload on a building owner or manager. It is a challenge to get enrolled with that program, but when you're in, it's great. And then really expanding our outreach methods, as we've kind of touched on as well. It's not just getting in touch with one person to benchmark. If you want to see progress, you have to talk to the person to benchmark, and then the decision makers about what will be improved at the building, and then the maintenance staff to make sure that they know what they're doing. So getting with all those folks that has and figuring out how to do that has been a benefit. On the other side, there's challenges with all of those. Getting to the right people has been a challenge. And then data access has still been a challenge. Even though DT has automated data, it is a challenge to get the data in the first place and to enroll in the tool at all. And I'll say that one of the challenges we have is also some Michigan State Public Service Commission restrictions on aggregated data access. The threshold for the number of customers you can aggregate is higher than any other state in the country, and it makes it a big challenge to get to some of the medium and small buildings to benchmarking to get them that data in the first place. Next slide.
Oh, that's the last one I've got for your building
That's
benchmarking.
it.
Yep.
Oh, and then HERD is later.
Yep, we'll bring that back up later. So yeah, we'll have
All right, I'll be
back
back
on here in a second. But thanks, Connor. So yeah, EPA also offers for now, it's listed on their website, so get it while it's there. A toolkit for ideas on adopting policies within your community. So you can check that out at that link below. And talking briefly here about residential, single family kinds of projects. There is really what we would call a good, better, best, and the best approach to doing it. So what you're looking at here is a good approach, and it's example from Holland, Michigan. And this is part of their Home Energy 101 process. So what they do, and instead of taking a ordinance requirement approach, they're saying this is an optional opportunity for a homeowner to reach out, sign up for this program, and get someone out into their home and get some information. And part of that information package that someone receives is this nice little graphic of how their electric usage compares to everyone on their street level. They are at the street level, and how gas level compares to the whole city. And so you get this nice little report from Holland, and it's just giving you this information, again, to give you a sense of your benchmarking, your comparison when you opt into the program. Now, if they also just threw in square footage, they would receive an energy use intensity, or EUI. So the particular EUI of this home with its square footage was a 43, for example. And that's where we get into the better approach. So the better approach is having your energy usage plus in tandem with ideally your climate and your square footage to get your energy use intensity. The Green Home Institute has created a tool here within our Green Star program, which is part of the certification option to get your energy use intensity for single family homes. And so you can go to the workbook, head over to the EUI tab, drop in your usage for your gas and electric, or just electric if you're all electric, and then throw in your home square footage, and you'll instantly get your energy use intensity. Again, that's better information to have in a policy, a disclosure policy, is to have that full view of how your home, works, or how a single family home works with the square footage thrown in. Now, getting into the best approach, we would think a asset rating or score would be the best way to go. So Portland, Oregon is the most well known for this. They've had a long-standing home energy disclosure policy for every time a home sells, it has to receive a DOE home energy score on-site audit, which gives a score 1 through 10, and that gives that report to the buyer to help them understand, what they're getting into when they're making the purchase of the home. And Ann Arbor has also followed suit with something similar, so I'll hand it back to Connor to briefly take us through that.
All right, I will briefly take us through it. So yes, we have exactly that in Ann Arbor. It is our Home Energy Rating and Disclosure Ordinance, or the HERD Ordinance. Similar to benchmarking, and as Brett touched on, it's consumer protection, getting folks the information on how their home will perform based on the home itself before they purchase. So this is a time of sale, so the score needs to be obtained and available before the sale. And we're hoping to, with all of our programs and the ecosystem we're building here with A20, is to build the awareness and motivate people to look for this, make this a priority when they're buying, selling, improving their home, and so on. Next slide. All right, basics here. I'll just kind of touch on a little bit. So for our ordinance, it does cover single family detached homes, side-by-side townhomes, but it doesn't cover stacked homes, mobile homes, but a lot of those are actually covered by our benchmarking ordinance. So different scale, because benchmarking touches on actual usage versus the building itself. But we have most buildings in the city touched by some kind of assessment, so folks know before they occupy it. And again, the score needs to be obtained and available before the home is sold, available to the real estate agent, us, and then available in at least one MLS listing so that home buyers can see that. And then I can mostly skip the last part because Brett did a really good description of it earlier, but we use the HES system, so it rates the home, more easy miles per gallon, digestible number for folks to digest. And then we always emphasize that a 5 is not like your score in school. It's not a failing grade. That is average. 7's great. 5 is just fine.
Thank you, Connor. Yeah. So as I mentioned, there's a good, better, best approach. Ann Arbor is doing the best approach, but there's also the best. Great, good, better, best, and the best, right? So the best approach is to take both these ideas together to do an asset rating plus calibrating in utility bill data. Now, this is done through the BPI 2400 method. Here's an example of a report right here in Michigan, and it's part of a requirement for the Inflation Reduction Act homes rebate to get the money for this. And so what it essentially does is it calibrates a home energy score like type asset rating plus the utility data to give you information on what's going on in the home, with it being weather normalized for electric, gas, combined usage, and then gives you a sense of how you compare to similar homes. And it even does a heat load calculation for you on what your heating and cooling demand and carbon footprint would be. So imagine if we had this kind of requirement as a disclosure policy every time a home sold. It took the utility data plus the asset, and it gave us a full list of information as well. So here's our final poll for everybody who's still here and hanging in with us. Really appreciate that. So I'll go ahead and launch this last poll here. And this last poll is ultimately about 2 questions. How should your city or township include, if at all, building energy benchmarking policies? So there's a little bit of a list here on what it might be, whether it could be benchmarking ordinances for all buildings, focused only on commercial, focused on commercial and multifamily. Maybe we shouldn't do ordinances. Maybe we should just do incentives, give out incentives for benchmarking. Or maybe cities should just encourage that benchmarking be done and provide education, training, launch a 2030 district is an amazing idea. Go out and do education in Michigan about incorporating Battle of the Buildings. Maybe it should just be that kind of voluntary, kind of fun approach. Or maybe your thought is, you know what, the city or township should not be involved in doing this at all, right? Just don't even get involved in this on one way or another. So that's the first question. The second question, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being against and 5 being in favor, do you think your city or township should adopt the benchmarking ordinances? And again, further in the chat, you could elaborate a little bit more on whether you think that's commercial or commercial and multifamily or residential, disclosure policies, should there be a square foot cutoff, some other kind of, component to that. It's a broad question, but obviously it gets more nuanced as you pass those ordinances, as you saw, like with Detroit and Ann Arbor, there are square footage cut-ins and floors and cutoffs as to whether, these things get activated. So take a look at that real quick. This is our final poll, and then we're gonna officially wrap up. So with that, we're gonna close out and then get into like any additional Q&A for any of our speakers who can still stick around for a little bit, or I'm happy to answer some questions before we wrap up for a couple minutes. But as a reminder, yes, this session is being recorded. It'll be posted on our YouTube channel, so you can access it there. For those of you watching this in the future, take the quiz with an 80% passing rate to receive your Con Ed. For those of you here for the entire CEU approved hour, you will receive your certificate over the next couple days from certs at gutenbergcerts.com. And a huge thanks to our speakers here today, Jacob Surfling with Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition, Kayla over at Michigan Collaborative, Michigan Green Building Collaborative, Caitlin Hood over at Bright Power, and Connor over with City of Ann Arbor and A20. Really appreciate you all for talking and joining in. So I know there's been a lot of conversation in the chat. Just so you know, I'm specifically looking at the Q&A. And so one question I saw come in is somebody is trying to head over to the HUD Exchange and download that multifamily utility benchmarking plan template. And you're absolutely right. This may be the step one of a unraveling of HUD's website, or it might just be an error on a file. I don't know. It could be one or the other. But, as HUD and Energy Star perhaps begin to shut down these programs, as we might expect, as they've verbally stated, that could be the case. Also, though, Energy Star has its own version of this, I would argue, much more well-detailed than what that HUD one used to be. So if you go to EPA's website, you can download a worksheet, and it tells you all the things you need to collect if you want to report data up onto the portfolio manager and have it be accurate. So that will, that's still in existence up on EPA's website. So that could also be why HUD shut this one down. And you can go up to EPA's website, download that file, and it kind of walks you through, all the information that that they need. So, were there any other questions that stood out, or any other thoughts that might So one question or comment was, all of these metrics focus on averages through a year. With climate extremes, don't we need to look at the power to maintain livability of the worst day of the year? That also aligns to a degree with peak load, drive, grid carbon intensity. Maybe I can throw that to you, Connor. I mean, I know when you're looking at portfolio manager, it's like giving you all of these averages. But of course, with climate change, those averages kind of get thrown out the window. Like, is that being factored in here at all?
Yeah, I was thinking about my answer to that actually. What I'd say for that is there's probably different data for different purposes. So when you put in just your energy bills, your energy cost in Energy Star, it gives you, I don't know, hundreds of different metrics. So it will give you a weather normalized EUI that's more comparative to similar properties. It accounts for that weather when you're looking at just how it performs. But you also have monthly usage and hopefully cost data to
Mhm.
see how much is used one year over the other when you know there's a colder winter one year than the other. So there's different metrics for different things, but broadly on affordability, that's where the efficiency in general comes in, the comparative efficiency. We can get into specifics, but if one property is 30% more efficient than the other, that's going to tell you how much you might be able to save in one property versus the other.
Mhm.
It's my first answer.
Yeah, Kayla, any thoughts on your end when you all are kind of looking at all this data, helping people figure it out? Is there a conversation about like, well, we're going to have extreme heat in the summer, or maybe still more extreme cold snaps? How does that factor in?
Yeah, that's definitely what the weather normalized EUI metric does. It does just that. I think it can be really confusing, and even I have to like double check it myself every now and again to make sure I'm saying it right. But it's not that Michigan can be compared to California. It's that like if you have those spikes, that's accounted for and it's normalized in your data. Um, and so I guess that's kind of my answer is I think the weather
Mm.
normalized EUI metric
Mm.
helps account for the extreme weather.
Yeah. Connor, one concern kind of came up in there about just the sort of balanced approach you take to the um, what the truth is, which the truth may hurt, and positivity. And so when someone's looking at their Energy Star score and it's low, or they're looking at their home energy score and it's low, and someone used the term they're insulted by it, right? So how do you address the sort of like, hey, if it's low, this is a room to improve, and that's how that's a benefit versus, oh, it's low, something's wrong with you.
Yeah, it's a little different for herd and benchmarking. For herd, we can say it's just the home. That's how
Yeah.
it's built, and we want you to have that info. For benchmarking, it is looking at usage, right? And I hear that a lot from landlords of, hey, I got a €100 building, I'm gonna score low. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So one thing we say is that you may not score how you think. So we want you to do this so that you know. And then it doesn't always hit well, but
Hmm.
it's true, as you showed in that chart earlier, that if you are scoring very low, there's probably a lot of easier, cheaper things that you can do quickly to get your efficiency up. So
Mhm.
yes, it's meaning that the building's less efficient, but on one hand, it means there's probably easier stuff to do. And then with our city programs, we have some incentive programs that will help with the cost of that to
Mhm.
make those improvements. So for HERD, we're doing wraparound outreach for benchmarking. We're working on a decarbonization strategy for the commercial sector so that when someone gets these scores, they have options, whether it's incentives, guidance, technical assistance, to really make those improvements. And we're not giving them a score that they can't do anything with. So
Mhm.
try to create that cycle so that folks not only have the information, but if they score low, we can help them out.
Mhm. Mhm. Kaylin, I mean, obviously with 2030 and Battle of Buildings, it's all voluntary, so someone can just not join, right? That's number one. But even if they do decide to, or they're worried, oh, what if I'm not doing so well? And then everybody hears about how bad we're operating our space. What are your thoughts on that?
We don't. We don't publicize it. We don't talk. It's like we're not trying to like hide it. It's just
Uh,
Battle of the Buildings exists to uplift those who are reducing energy, who are working hard in this space, and that's why we look at the biggest losers. So, I mean, for technical part of that, we have a database of about 1,400 buildings. In Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Some of those finish the competition every year, some of them don't. The percentage of who finishes every year it varies. And so I only look at those who are reducing energy, and that's who we talk about. For the 2030 district, we've struggled with this in the past, and some districts do it differently on how they report on their data because the amount of like the compliance that we have and who is reporting each year. We don't love to put out numbers because it shifts every year. And so we're not like, we don't have the scorecards publicized for those in the 2030 district. Although if we did, we do think it'd be kind of inflated because kind of the best of the best are, signing on to the 2030 decarbonization mission. However, we're here to help anybody with their benchmarking. If we go into a building and their score is low, we have the tools and resources and the connections to help them improve their building.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could add
All right.
briefly,
Go ahead,
Brett,
Connor.
if we have just a minute, that Ann Arbor, as part of our benchmarking ordinance, we do put out data. We're going to do our first disclosure shortly, and that will have individual building data. And that's a tough conversation we have with landlords and owners. So sometimes it helps to frame it as, hey, you run a property management company. If you were looking to lease a space in a building, wouldn't you want to know how your energy bills would be? Different way of looking at it that doesn't always work, but that's how we try to frame it, as well as, if you were renting space, wouldn't this be helpful?
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate Connor, Caleb, for you sticking on a little bit longer here, and everyone else who stayed on to keep the conversation going. We're going to send all this out, the recording out, and follow up to everybody. And we're going to be continuing this conversation now through November, and then maybe looking at the sort of next step in another conversation about, which we didn't mention, is building performance standards, which is essentially, what is that next step beyond, hey, you're measuring, now what targets do you need to hit? So that's a whole nother level. And so if you look at Institute of Market Transformations, there's actually places passing these building performance standards of actual targets you need to hit. HUD has one in place for some of their income qualified properties. They actually require maintaining an Energy Star certification to keep getting paid. So it's real. We need to measure, but then we need to move on to actually hit the targets. So didn't get into that today. We're just kind of looking at the measuring, but that may be the next kind of conversation we have. So thank you all for joining us. Thank everybody. Take care, and we will be here same time, same place next week for our regular webinar series to continue on affordable housing urban projects. So we'll see you all then. So take care. Goodbye.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.